Hey guys, so I am not here today, obviously, but I decided to record myself so you at least got my lecture for what goes along with this PowerPoint, Google Slides, whatever you want to call it. Before we get into the slideshow, I do want to talk about this, okay? I posted this to Schoology. Most of you probably haven't read it, which is fine, but I'll give you a copy later in the week. But this is your choice book unit. So the fourth 9 weeks, we're going to read Julius Caesar, which mostly means we're going to watch it. But we're also going to have a choice book. So the last 4 weeks or so of school, really five, you're going to pick a book out of the list I've given you, and you're going to work in small groups to read and discuss all that kind of stuff. But so this is going to go to you. I'm going to give it to you probably on block day. We'll tape it in our notebook, and then I'll email parents about what books you've chosen. But I got to give you an introduction to the book, so that's what today is. It is a lecture about how are you going to pick the book that you want? Some of y'all are reluctant readers, so you probably don't want to read anything if you don't have to. But I've come up with a pretty wide selection of different topics, different reading levels, different lengths. So hopefully everyone can find a book that they want. So let me start the actual slideshow here. Okay, yay, technology. All right, so what are you going to read? First of all, I got to tell you why I'm doing this. First of all, I know that as a, 30 something English teacher, the things that I like are not the same things that you 10th graders like. So I understand that. And most researchers agree, researchers, I said that right, that teenagers need some choice in your curriculum. So this is a quote. I don't expect you to read it, but more or less, if I give you the opportunity to read what you're interested in, it's going to be more meaningful to you. And that's all I really care about, that you pick a book that you really like and then it sticks with you. So obviously, sometimes, we pick selections that you just might not like to begin with, and then all of a sudden you don't want to read anything, blah, blah, blah. So we understand, most teachers, that you guys need sort of a wide variety of just options. And that's what I'm going to give you today. So, what do I mean by choice? Well, you are literally going to pick the book that you enjoy the most, and you will work with small groups, like 3 to 4 people, maybe by yourself if that's what floats your boat. That will be the last 4.5 weeks of our class. Okay, so how do we even determine what books that we like? I mean, sometimes it's based off the cover, sometimes it's based off a recommendation a friend gave us, and sometimes it's just because you saw it and you wanted to read it. Okay, so I'm going to give you 6 criteria that you're going to use to pick your book. The first being the topic, so that's like the summary. What is it about? Perspective is what lens is it giving us into a part of the world that we might not be familiar with, or maybe we are familiar with. The third is the awards and accolades. So who else liked it? Who gave it some cred? For readability, so that's going to be, is it easy? What grade level it is? There's this thing called Lexile, which tells us how difficult a book is, or maybe how easy. Length, I know length is very important for some of y'all. You're going to be like, I want the shortest. Give me the shortest. Okay, well, you got a couple short ones you can pick from. And the last one is going to be my review. I read all of these, obviously, most of them over spring break, but nonetheless, they're all really good and they've been on my list for a long, long time. But the first thing you have to figure out is, are you picking based off sympathy? Like you feel sorry for someone, you feel excited, you feel happy, or you yourself have experienced it, therefore you're picking based off of empathy. So you really got to think about, how am I picking these books? Some of you are like, I don't really care, but figure that out. Now, what you're going to do is make sure you understand these criteria. So, topic, what is the book about? What universal ideas, those have never gone away, will it address? And then maybe setting, time, place, location. All right, so perspective, that's the lens. Like I said, these books I'm going to give you could talk about different religions, different races. Maybe they're immigrant. Maybe it's about genders, cultural, socioeconomic, sexual orientation, political. All those things are sort of covered in this book. Um, what I want you to do is pick something that you're familiar with, or maybe it's something you're not familiar with, and you can use a book to sort of understand people who are totally different from you. That's the best way to learn about people, in my personal opinion. That's not that awkward. You're meeting someone who's not quite like you. Read about it first, figure it out, and then go into the real world. Just my life advice. All right, so then you've got awards and accolades. Obviously, has the book received any awards? Does it have any honors? Did it make any lists? And then what are some quotes? On the back of the book, it's like, the New York Times believes X, Y, or Z, or according to the Washington Post, this is the book that people can't put down. I'll give you a little blurbs about that. And then lastly, it's going to be, or not lastly, sorry, we have readability. Forgot about that. That's just what's the grade level or reading level. The last one, what? Y'all, I thought I've already done these. My bad. Length, how many pages are there? How many pages per week? I know that's important for those of you who have extracurriculars. Here's the last one. Raspberry's review. What did I think about it? What are some potential trigger warnings? There are some. Some of these are going to be hard to read. And then what makes it controversial? Don't pick a book that if you go home and you tell mom or dad and you're like, look at this book I'm reading, that you know you're going to get questions about. Obviously, you're going to need to talk to them. They're going to get an email from me about what book you're reading, but pick one that you feel comfortable with, okay? Obviously, I want you to push the boundaries of the comfortability that you're with if you're picking a book that's something different from you, but be smart in your selections. Okay, how can I be smart? You keep talking, Raspberry. What am I supposed to do? Okay, so on your teacher page in your interactive notebook, I've drawn it on the board, but you also want to have this chart drawn out. So go ahead and head the page here. I think I put at the board like ChoiceBook unit or something, ChoiceBook selection. On your lines down the page, write free lunch. I'll always write back the 57 bus, laughing at my nightmare, Dreamland, Americanized, Bite of the Mango. Okay, so again, you're gonna write all of those books down the page, like on like a normal line, like where writing. Now, what you're then going to do is make little headings that go on the upper side, which is topics or perspective, awards, readability, length, and then my review. So what you're ultimately going to have is like a little score sheet, okay? Because I'm going to be previewing all of these books and you're going to want to keep up with this. So as I go over these books, when I'm talking about one specifically, when I'm talking about free lunch, and I tell you about it's about childhood poverty, maybe that's something that interests you because you either don't know anything about it, or maybe you know some people who've experienced childhood poverty. Maybe you got grandparents, or maybe you have friends, or maybe you yourself are experiencing that. Check that. No one's going to see this, okay? This is just sort of for you to keep track of what books you think that you want to read. But regardless, at the end, what's going to happen is you'll have lots of check marks throughout the whole presentation. And at the end, you're going to figure out which two books, I've got my best one highlighted here, but which two books do you want to preview on block day? Make sure you're paying attention to this because listen, if you don't take this seriously and I give you your preview books and you're like, man, I didn't even try on that. Well, you just put yourself in a bad spot, pal, because you've got to make sure that you're doing this right. Again, you're going to put all your check marks as we go through this lecture, and then at the end, you'll figure out which two books you like, and then we can preview for block day. Okay? All right, let's get into it. Free lunch. So free lunch is about poverty, family dynamics, middle school, and being like the outcast or the outsider. All right, so free lunch is the story of Rex's efforts to navigate his first semester of sixth grade, who to sit with, not being able to join the football team, Halloween in a handmade costume, classmates and a teacher take one look at him and decides he's trouble. So obviously, they're all stereotyping him. And it's all because he's worrying about where he's going to get his lunch from. Where is his next meal coming from? Does he have enough money, to even pay for food? So his mom and her boyfriend are out of work, and life at home is punctuated by outbursts of violence. Halfway through the semester, his family is evicted, and he ends up in government-subsidized housing in the view of the school. Okay, that's pretty tough. So this book is really short. It's going to talk about childhood poverty and how a middle schooler sort of navigates those waters of trying to fit in and figure out who you are, all the while worried about poverty at the same time. All right, I'll always write back. This is the first one that I read, and I really liked it, and it was a breeze. So easy to read. So this is about friendship, generosity, the American dream, privilege, and education. So it started as an assignment. Everyone in Caitlin's class wrote to an unknown student somewhere in a distant place. Martin was lucky enough to receive a pen pal letter. There were only 10 letters and 50 kids in his class, but he was the top student, so he got the first one. That letter was the beginning of a correspondence that spanned 6 years and changed 2 lives. So you have Caitlin, who's in Pennsylvania, and Martin, who is in, is it Ghana? I can't remember now that I say that. I'll show you the map later, but in Africa, and it's a story about how they become pen pals and what happens after that. It's very cute, very sweet. All right, topic for the 57 bus. So hate crimes, identity issues, justice, LGBTQ plus, and then acceptance. All right, so this is one teenager in a skirt one teenager with a lighter in a moment that changes both of their lives forever. If it weren't for the 57 bus, Sasha and Richard never would have met. Both were high school students from Oakland, California, one of the most diverse cities in the country, but they inhabited different worlds. Sasha, a white teen, lived in the middle class foothills and attended a small private school. Richard, a black teen, lived in the crime plagued flatlands and attended a large public one. Each day, their paths overlapped for a mere 8 minutes. But one afternoon on the bus ride home from school, a single reckless act left Sasha severely burned and Richard charged with 2 hate crimes and facing life imprisonment. All right, so hot topic. This made the news not too long ago, but very, very, very timely in what's going on in our country with just current political issues, social issues. If it strikes your fancy, consider the 57 bus. All right, next, this is going to be Laughing at My Nightmare. It's about health, it's about acceptance, it's about having disability. Sometimes we call it ableism, and then life or death. So, Laughing at My Nightmare describes the challenges that Shane, our author, faces as a 21-year-old with spinal muscular atrophy. From awkward handshakes to having a girlfriend and everything in between, Shane handles his situation with humor and you only will live once perspective on life. While he does talk about everyday issues that are relatable to teens, he also offers an eye-opening perspective on what it's like to have a life-threatening disease. Okay, so maybe you've never experienced someone who's had a disability or at least a physical disability and you want a window into that, this is your book. Or maybe you just want to know what it's like to be a teenage boy. Mr. Burkall is going to tell you a lot about that. But anyway, pretty easy, fun little read. All right, topic for Dreamland. All right, so Dreamland is a true tale of America's opiate epidemic. This is more nonfiction than a memoir, but it's got some fascinating information that I wish that I had known earlier. But it's about corporate greed, drug addiction, and death. Okay, so introducing a memorable cast of characters, pharmaceutical pioneers, young Mexican entrepreneurs, narcotic investigators, survivors, teens, and parents. Dreamland is a revelatory account of the massive threat, the opioid epidemic, facing America and its heartland. So most of this takes place in Ohio, but it's going to jump around the country. Quinones explains how the rise of the prescription drugs OxyContin, a miraculous and extremely addictive painkiller pushed by pharmaceutical companies, paralleled the massive influx of black tar heroin. Cheap, potent, and originating from one small country on Mexico's western coast. County is what that says. I can read. From the drug cartel. So this is pretty short. It is nonfiction where it's going to read more informative and not like someone's life story. But y'all, if you are into the justice system, if you are into police, if you are into maybe you got family members who have had problems with these substances or any substance, this is going to answer a lot of questions for you, probably make you angry, and then probably make you feel some type of way. But it's really, really interesting for those of you who pick it. All right, second to last one, I think, is the book called Americanized, Rebel Without a Green Card. So this is about immigration, teenage family drama, just family in general, and friendships as well. So the summary. At 13, bright-eyed, straight-A student Sarah Sadid uncovered a terrible family secret. She was breaking the law simply by living in the United States. Only 2 years old when her parents fled Iran, she didn't learn of the undocumented status until her older sister wanted to apply for an after-school job, but couldn't because she didn't have a social security number. Sarah pivots gracefully from terrifying prospect that she might be kicked out of the country at any time to the almost as terrifying possibility that she might be the only one of her friends without a date to prom. This moving, often hilarious story is for anyone who has shared either fear. So, teenage girls, this one, you guys, you're going to love it if you pick this one. It is hilarious. There are some laugh out loud moments, and it's pretty easy to read. Very easy to read. And this is the last one. So, it's called The Bite of a Mango. The topic is war crimes and violence, survival, and perseverance. So, summary. When 12-year-old Mariatu set out for a neighboring village outside of Sierra Leone, it's in Africa, she never arrived. Heavily armed rebel soldiers, many no older than children themselves, attacked and tortured Mariatu. During this brutal act of senseless violence, they cut off both of her hands. Stumbling through the countryside, Mariatu miraculously survived. As told to her by Mariatu, journalist Susan McClelland has written the heartbreaking true story of the brutal attack its aftermath, and Mariatu's eventual arrival in Toronto, where she began to pull her life together, or pieces of her broken life together with courage, astonishing resilience, and hope. This one has sort of glimpses of what Born a Crime was about, but it's also mostly about war, guys, and the violence of that and what people do when they are so passionate for a cause and the risk that they take and then the consequences of those actions. It's very short, easy to read, but it's tough. It's tough. It's got some really, really, really tough topics in there. Okay, now what you're going to do now is figure out which ones that you want to read based on the topic alone. Do that for me now. All right, perspective. So, what are some of the potential lenses that the book provides? So, we're talking about free lunch. So, free lunch, if you've ever wanted to read a book about someone who's economically disadvantaged, this is it. If you want to sort of read about the single parent lifestyle, this is for you. Maybe you have a stepfather or a step parent and you want to see what someone else's experiences has been like, this is for you. Maybe you come from a mixed family, or maybe you have no idea what it's like to have a mixed family or to be a mixed person. This one is for you. All right, perspectives for I'll always write back. So third world country. So I think it's Ghana. It's probably like New Guinea. No, it's not. New Guinea's by Australia. Anyway, it's going to be Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, my bad. So we're talking about third world country of Zimbabwe. We're talking about the American dream, who can achieve it. We're talking about what it's like to be an English language learner because he's learning English while he's in Africa. That's how he's able to write back to Caitlin. And then there's this awesome juxtaposition of what it's like to be a white person in America and then what it's like to be a black person in Zimbabwe. Obviously, that's the majority race there, but just the differences of the lives is really interesting. So if you think that's an interesting perspective, I would consider that. All right, perspective for the 57 bus. I said this earlier, but LGBTQ plus and gender identities. If that's something that you're passionate about, then this is something for you. Maybe if you identify as a geek or a misfit, or you've always wanted to know more about the geeks or the misfits, maybe you are the people who thought you were different from them. This is going to give you a window into what their lives are like. Maybe you want to know what it's like to be in a big city. Oakland is a huge city right outside of San Francisco, right? I think it's north of it. I don't know. But anyway, it's a great look at what city life is like. We don't even think about public transportation. None of us get on buses, barely get on buses to go to school. The other thing is if you are passionate about the justice system or even juvenile detention, this is for you, y'all. This has got some really heavy stuff in there, but it's also wonderful. But those are the perspectives you're going to come across. Sorry, I've got the hiccups. All right, so laughing at my nightmare. So what are the perspectives? Ableism. Ableism is what most of us have, which is going to be where we are able to do things body willing without any kind of trouble. Okay, we often take it for granted because we don't understand what it's like to be able bodied until we are no longer able bodied. But he's going to address that because he clearly has a physical disability, but he's also going to touch on some mental disabilities or mental problems, anger, depression, anxiety, all those things. I will say, y'all, he talks about being in a wheelchair like with a lot of witty and blunt humor. See that little SHI hashtag or number sign? Yeah, he cusses a bunch. But he's talking about the teenage boy experiences. And personally, I never cared to know that much about the teenage boy experience, but guys, y'all might be interested. It's kind of funny. Some of it's cringeworthy, but it's a good little look into those perspectives. All right, Dreamland. So this is going to be, geared toward those perspectives of families affected by the opiates. We've got law enforcement, obviously the addicts themselves, people who relapse, people who go in and out of rehab, even the cartel. I didn't put that here, but it's going to sort of follow a drug dealer, and you're going to start to feel kind of bad for that person. I mean, I did at least. You might not, but everyone has a story. People aren't just bad. People make bad choices. But anyway, it also is going to have the law and then the justice system. Okay, so it's a really, really good way to look at those different lenses. Okay, perspectives on Americanized. So obviously immigrant, they're from Iran. So you've got Iranian culture and then Farsi language. That's the language that her parents spoke and most of her family. But she obviously is Americanized because she grew up in the States. And this is going to have the teenage girl perspective. So ladies, if you want to sort of read a story that's going to basically match with what you're going through right now, you're going to find a lot of humor and a lot of sort of acceptance, I guess, in this because you're going to accept a lot of things about your life that, maybe no one told you was okay. But it's all funny. But that's Americanized. And then lastly, you got Bite of the Mango. So the perspective is a wartime refugee. So perhaps you want to read more about like what happened to those people who were living in a war ravaged um, state. Think of like Russia and Ukraine. This is just in Africa, Western Africa. Now, perspective here is going to be a preteen to a 24-year-old. She's about 11 when the book starts, and most of it's from like 11 to 16, and then it jumps a little bit. But it's her age group is very important because it's sort of coming of age. And the last perspective it's going to also give you is the African tribal culture, which we sort of got a glimpse in with Born a Crime, but not quite. This is going to do a better job of that because South Africa was more developed than Sierra Leone was. All right, now just one last thing. This is sort of where in the world these books sort of take place, either physically or culturally. So you've got Bus 57, Free Lunch, Dreamland, and then Laughing at My Nightmare are all specifically in America, as is Americanized, but there's lots of reference to Iranian culture in that book. Now, Bite of the Mango is going to be Sierra Leone, and then I'll always write back, like I remembered, is Zimbabwe, and then Caitlin is in Pennsylvania. So maybe you want to push outside the envelope and you want to move away from just America. That's fine. This is where you're going to look at for perspectives and like a world stage. All right, so based on the perspectives, which book are you going to check? All right, these are sort of like the awards and the praise for this. All right, so Free Lunch won the 2020 YALSA Excellence in Nonfiction. That's a really, really respected is the word, and respected and highly coveted award. I thought this review was interesting. It says, this is by Sasha, who's 12, and she's from Times Kids. She says, for readers who have experienced poverty, Free Lunch will let them know they are not alone. Those who haven't will feel compassion for Rex and his brother. I also think every politician should read this book. So this kid, even at 12, knew that there was a lot to be learned from this one boy's experience with childhood poverty. So maybe that award, maybe this review makes you want to read it. All right, I'll always write back. So, winner of the Junior Library Guild Awards. I really think that this review sums it up well. It says, but the remarkable tenacity of these two souls pulls like a magnet across the world by their opposite polarities. One committed to helping, the other to surviving, is deeply affecting. There's no way to read their account without feeling vulnerable to just the stab of sympathy that started their story. It is quite a little miracle of unexpected geniuses. And I couldn't put this one down. I couldn't. And it's letters back and forth, so it reads so fast. But it's definitely interesting. All right, here we got the 57 bus. It has won all the awards. Okay. I'm not going to read through all of those, but it's highly coveted. It's well respected, and people really, really love it. The review I've got is a powerful story of class and race, gender and identity, justice and mercy, love and hate. Slatter has crafted a compelling true crime story with ramifications for our most vulnerable youth. Okay. A really fantastic book. All right. Laughing at My Nightmare won a lot of awards, had lots of popularity when it came out. So here's the review I picked. Burkall's narrative will resonate with readers who will laugh along with the funny stories, cringe at the awkward moments. There's a lot. And tear up at the emotionally charged parts. A poignant story that provides a fresh perspective on life. Okay. This is a really good one. I think a lot of you guys, especially the boys, will like this. So if you're struggling, this one's super easy to read, y'all. Very easy. It also has pictures. Some of y'all like pictures. All right, Dreamland. This just came out for young readers. There's an adult version, but I picked the young adult version to be easier to read. But so it only has one award so far, but it's going to get a whole lot more. So I'll read this. It says, this fast-moving and relatively austere account will acquaint teen readers, acquaint teen readers with important elements of the opioid epidemic throughout the discussion is only a gateway, if you will, to a deeper story of distress. Yet it ends on a note of quiet hope. Having hit bottom, Portsmouth, Ohio is turning itself around. Once a junkie's haven, Mr. Quinones writes, is now a place with culture of recovery, a refuge for those seeking a new life. Again, y'all, if you know anyone who's touched by addiction or anyone in your family, I would read this. It's just enlightening. All right, Americanized. You've got a bunch of awards that came out. Also, this one's going to be turned into a TV series, I think, for ABC or Hulu. I'm trying to figure out who else is not Disney. But anyway, it's going to be on a streaming service, and you might want to have read it. But anyway, from Bustle, it says a must read, a vitally important memoir, poignant and often LOL funny. That is true. I read out a couple pages to some of my friends, and they were on the floor. It was that funny. But again, it's for girls, for women. Boys, I think that you'll like it, but I think that it offers a lot more female humor than the others. Okay, but very, very funny. Last one, Bite of the Mango. So y'all, it came out in 2009, so a long time ago, but it is still being talked about today among educators. Look at the Publisher's Weekly quote. It says, it will unsettle readers and then inspire them. Y'all, it is tough. It is tough to read. There are some scenes that were hard for me. There are some scenes that, are exceptionally violent and you don't want to think of happening to an 11 or 12-year-old, but it did. And she comes out on the other side and she's able to talk about it. And I think that's the most powerful piece. But y'all, it is very, very good. It's also one of the shortest ones. All right. So which one has earned your respect based off of the awards and the reviews? Readability. This is the one where we ask ourselves, like, am I just going to pick this because it's easy? So I have this sort of sliding scale here. So over where it says 540, that's the lowest reading level. So 6th to 8th grade. I'm not saying that you are only at a 6th or 8th grade reading level. I'm telling you that's how easy it is to read. A child should be able to read that with ease who's in the 6th or 8th grade. Okay? If reading is not your thing, if you don't want to read at home, you're reluctant, you just don't want to do it, you want to go for the bottom 3 choices. Okay? And I'm not saying that because you can't read. I want to make this easy for you. I don't want you to get a bad grade because you picked a book that you just couldn't get through. The first 3, the second one's long, but the first 3 are easy to read. Now, the next 4, the 57 Bus, Dreamland, Americanized, and Laughing at My Nightmare, are all a little bit harder, but none are totally out of reach. 57 Bus, that was super, super easy for 9th and 10th grade. That's where you are right now. It's right at your level. Americanized is just barely ratcheted up, and then you're going to have the Dreamland, which is going to be closer to about 13, not 13, about, I think it's 11, 13. So just over 1100. But it's not that it's that hard to read. It's mostly informative, but he blends informative with personal anecdotes and personal stories. So I think you'll like it. Laughing at My Nightmare is the hardest one, but y'all, it's written like how we would talk to each other, and there are literally like 5 cuss words on every page. But just letting you know, this is the readability. So when you think about readability, you might want to think about, what's realistic for me? Am I a good reader? Do I read like this? Definitely the top 4. If you're not a great reader or you're reluctant or you just don't think you're going to read much at home, pick one of the bottom 3. That's just my suggestion. Okay, so make sure that you put your check marks based off the reading level. All right, length. I know some of you are like, I don't care about any of this other stuff, Ms. Raspberry. I just want to know how long it is. Okay, so I've made this upside down pyramid. So free lunch is the shortest at 212. Then you have Bite of the Mango, which is 216. Then you have Dreamland, which is 224. Then Laughing at My Nightmare, which is the hardest, but it's actually not that hard to read. It is at 272. Then the one that's probably the most accessible and based on length, based on Lexile, is Americanized. That's 304. The 57 Bus is 320. It sounds like a lot, but it's going to fly by. It's broken into 4 parts already for you. It's easy. And then the longest is I'll Always Write Back. It says 416, y'all, but I promise you, I read that in about a day and a half. Really. And it's letter, so it goes back and forth and back and forth, and you're constantly wanting to figure out what's happened with Martin and what's happened with Caitlin. But if length is important, think about that. And if that doesn't quite sit with you, then think about this. This is how many pages a week you would have to read. So like for Rex Ogle's free lunch, you'd have to read about 53 pages a week. That's about 10 pages a day. We will be doing Take 10 every single day, so you'll have in-class reading time. but you guys are going to have to agree with your group members about how many pages you can actually sustain to get through the book. Okay, but I'm not going to read through all of these because you can do that. But think about this: 55 for Bite of the Mango, and then you're looking at up to 80 pages a week for the 57 bus. But that's not even 20 pages a night. Okay, and that's just on weekdays. I'm not counting the weekend, even though I would be happy for you to read during the weekend. But again, think about the page numbers and what you think is doable for your reading style. All right, so make your check marks, figure out based on length which one you like. All right, so here's my review. I made little raspberries. I know, cheesy, but based on free lunch, I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's easy to read. It's got really short chapters. It talks about the middle school experience that we all know. It's universal. It's relatable. Now, what might raise eyebrows? What might go, is that really good for kids? Childhood poverty? It's not an easy topic. No one wants to think children actually live this way, but it happens. Domestic violence and abuse. All right, so that's going to be tough for some people. Trigger warning if it makes you uncomfortable, but it happens, and he does a nice job of sort of explaining what that looks like. And then you've got childhood neglect because he's got parents who aren't really taking care of him. Okay, but that's going to be what might raise eyebrows. But again, I'm going to give that a 3.5 out of 5. All right, so then we've got I'll always write back. So although it's super long, y'all, and it looks long, the alternating perspectives go fast. I kept wanting to read more. I promise you, I couldn't put it down. It's got endearing characters. I loved all of them, even though the sort of stoner brother, but it's really great. It's also just has a positive message at the end. Now, what might raise eyebrows? Honestly, not a whole lot. This one's not very sort of pushing all the need censoring buttons. But we might consider like the white savior complex, how Caitlin feels like she has to save Martin. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. We'll read articles about it, but that might make it bad. And then the American dream and its attainability. Many people argue that the American dream, it's not real, doesn't happen. People can actually reach it. This book tells you otherwise. All right, so I gave that one 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, 57 Bus. Y'all, I love this book. I couldn't put it down. I sent it to all my teacher friends. I kept having to remind myself that this is real because it doesn't read like nonfiction. It reads like it's fiction, but they're real people. It's got various text types. So some chapters are going to be like narrative, like what you're used to. Some are going to have blog posts. Some are Facebook posts. Some are text messages. So it was an interesting read. It sort of kept me engaged with it. I really love getting to know each character. So Sasha had a section and Richard had a section, and I loved feeling like I got to know those people. And also, I didn't know a whole lot about this situation. I don't know a lot about gender identities, but I feel like I've learned a lot. I don't think I could have a conversation confidently about it, but I feel like it gave me a lot of information that if I wanted to, I could, talk to someone about that. What might raise eyebrows? LGBTQ plus topics. There's some mild cursing, so there's some cuss words every now and then, and there is references to violence or gang violence. But y'all, hands down, 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it. All right, what about Laughing at My Nightmare? So what's nice is that every single chapter is easy to read, and it's broken up where you don't feel like you have to have read certain chapters to get you where you need to be. There's definitely some laugh out loud moments. I laughed out loud. There were some eye opening moments when you really think about like, he can't even wipe his butt, y'all. So we all take that for granted, but imagine if you couldn't. What might raise eyebrows? All the curse words. I mean, y'all, he talks like I do. He talks like every page has like 5 cuss words. Maybe not every page, but it's a lot. But it's not done in a way that you're put off by it. He's doing it for emphasis and for humor, so it works. There are some definitely cringy descriptions of pretty normal things. The bathroom, there's some things I just didn't want to know. Also, just teenage boy things. Never really wanted to know some of those things. So, it's it's okay. The third thing is he's a teenager, so he's describing some things that are like probably R-rated, but not anything that you wouldn't watch on TV. Okay, but I gave that one a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. Not my favorite, but it was really good. Then we got Dreamland, y'all. It made me angry, but in a good way, and it just like let me know that there are there are people who are trying to fix this problem, but it was just read so well. There's also a really good blend of anecdotes and facts, and then it's short. It packs a punch of information. Um, Sorry, I had to text a friend. So anyway, what could possibly be bad about this? Well, obviously drugs, lots of drug use. It's not explicit, but it's gonna talk about how people got hooked on drugs, why they got hooked, why they couldn't get off of it. There's violence, people act crazy when they're on drugs, and there's gonna be mild language. I will preface, you guys are gonna be buying these books, and the one major con is that this is so new that it's still only in hardback, so it's $20. That might not be a big deal for some of you, but yeah, it's kind of expensive, but 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right. Then we got Americanized. Y'all, I loved the juxtaposition, like contrast of two things of the immigrant fears and just teenage girl comedy. And I'm talking like, she's got this fear of being deported, but then she's also like, I got to figure out how to get these zits off my face. So it's really, really sort of heartwarming and also serious at the same time. There were some laugh out loud moments. Like I said, I read some to my friends. It's super easy to read. It's got 90s nostalgia for me. I was a kid in the 90s, but I could relate to a lot of it. So this might relate to somebody like your parents or something. Um, I know they're maybe a touch older than me, but anyway, it was really easy to read. What might raise eyebrows? Some mild language. It's definitely not any language like "Laughing at My Nightmare." There is some teenage drug use, definitely, and then there's some sexual situations, but it's a coming of age novel, so or not novel, sorry, memoir. So you're gonna expect someone to talk about, first time experiences or fears associated with that, anything like that. But I really liked it. I read this one in a day, not just in one sitting, but morning, lunch, and then at night. But I got it finished and I liked it so much I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, and then the last one is The Bite of the Mango. Y'all, this will stick with you. There are some scenes that I'm not going to be able to get in my head for a while, but it's really easy to read. I literally read it in about 3 hours today, and it acts like a window into a world that many of us could never imagine. We're fortunate to live where we live, where we don't have sort of those horrors at our back door, but this really sort of shed light on what goes on in countries where they don't have a system like we have. But what might raise eyebrows is there's obviously violence. She gets her hands chopped off. There's a sexual assault, so trigger warning for anyone who doesn't want to read it because of that. And there's some tribal rituals that we are all going to go, what? But that's just part of their culture. So while it might be different for us, it's just normal for them. But that could definitely raise eyebrows. But I really did like it. It was a quick read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 raspberries. Okay, now add up your checks and determine which two books are the most interesting to you, because you're going to be reading a preview of those during block day. This is important down here. On Monday, March 28th, you're doing your introduction. That's right now. On this Friday, you're going to tell me which book you want. Then Tuesday the 12th, I'm going to see that you've ordered your book and you have it with you. So then we can start bringing our books to class and reading and talking about them. April 18th, all the way until, well, really all the way until like May 16th. But that first week, you got to have your book. Okay, so I'm going to be checking for that April 12th. So y'all, please, please, please make sure you fill out your little chart. I'll be coming around on block day to check those to make sure you did it and that you did this Edpuzzle. Now you can do your Caesar stuff. See y'all on block day.